Hi, this is Jim Cunningham. We're going to talk about the Corporate Transparency Act, what you need to know now, because this is effective. We're doing this in 2024, and this is something that you really need to be paying attention to if you have an LLC. So this affects largely family-held LLCs. It's not affecting the big companies, so their government's going after the little guys on this one. What is the Corporate Transparency Act? If you're watching this on video on either our webinar or YouTube, there's a picture of the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network seal on here. It's part of Department of Treasury, and I'm going to explain why that's important. Corporate Transparency Act was passed a couple of years ago. It was enacted or effective January 1 of 2024. And as we're doing this, we are in January of 2024. These are new reporting requirements for many business entities. And in fact, if you have a family kind of business entity, and as you'll see, if it's less than 5 million in revenue and less than 20 employees, you're probably a reporting company. So that's a lot of our LLCs that we set up for clients. You know, we might set up an LLC and put an apartment building in there, 100,000 a year in income. That's going to be a reporting entity. And the fines are severe. They're up to $10 million. They're $500 per day fine and up to 2 years in prison. And if you own or manage one of these LLCs or partnerships or corporations, please pay close attention to this. I'm going to get into the why and why this is happening, not so much the mechanics on how to do it. There's a lot of coverage out there in, you know, if you Google things, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network has a great website. It kind of leads you through that. But I'm going to really talk about why this is existing and what these are the things you should be aware of. So a reporting company, there's some new terms here that we have to talk about, and I'll go in depth on this. But if you're looking at this slide will appear at the end of our materials. This is a really good like single page takeaway. Like just, you know, capture this on your screen and print it out. This kind of gives you the real highlights and the terms that you need to pay attention to. So what we're talking about are companies. These are LLCs, partnerships, corporations, anything that is filed with the Secretary of State. So each state has a Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State is the one that says, yes, Johnny, here's your California LLC. So the California Secretary of State has a filing requirement if you want to have an LLC or a corporation or a limited partnership. Some general partnerships can be registered, but they're not required to be registered. So if it's not registered, arguably, you know, you're not part of this, although, you know, I'm not sure I would, you know, go to the bank on that one. That's kind of iffy. So a company applicant is a human being. It's a person who directly files the document that created the reporting company. So what this means is the company, so Main Street LLC is a reporting company. Well, who's supposed to do that? Well, the person who files the articles of organization, if it's an LLC, the articles of incorporation, if it's a corporation, that person is responsible to make sure that the company is reported to the FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. That's the person who's responsible for the filing. Now, a reporting company, so the company's on the books, the government knows, you know, Treasury knows that this company's in existence. Well, what other reporting requirements are there? Well, there is a beneficial ownership information form that has to be required, and beneficial owners are people who have substantial control over the entity or own 25% or more. So if you own 20%, nope, you're not a beneficial owner. If it's 25% or more, or you have substantial control, then you also have to file a beneficial ownership statement. So there are three things that are going on here. You have to effectively register your company. You have to, and the person who filed that has to register the company. And the third element of that is you have to report on the beneficial ownership. Now, I'm going to unpack this as we go through, okay? But this is something really important to know. It matters when the entity was formed. So if the entity was formed December 31, 2023 or earlier, the reporting starts in 2025. So we're in January of 2024. You got until 2025. If it's formed in the year 2024, you have 90 days to report. And if it's anything else, it's 30 days. So if you form it in January 1, 2025, you know, if you're watching this in 2025 or 2026, that 30-day rule, at least under current law in January of 2024, that will be a 30-day requirement. So I'm Jim Cunningham. I'm a partner at Cunningham Legal. This year marks 30 years of experience as a lawyer. So I think I'm going to cap it at 30. Even if I have 35, I'm going to say I have more than 30 years experience because at some point, I don't know, maybe it's an expiration date. Who knows? I'm a certified specialist in estate planning, trust and probate law, real estate broker, securities, and insurance license. Also a pilot, not a current pilot, but a pilot. We have many lawyers in our firm. Right now, we have 13 lawyers in our firm. We're getting ready to add another one. And this is, we are dedicated to all things estate planning, family wealth transfer, real estate within the context of, you own property and you're a real estate investor. So we tend to serve the mass affluent, and those are typically our clients. So if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can also click the like button, and or the thumbs up button, and that will give us some likes on our videos, and it pops us up in our feed, and we really appreciate that. But if you subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the bell, you will be nudged or pinged when we post our videos, which is generally Thursdays at 6 p.m. Pacific time. I'm a lawyer. This is not legal advice. We're going to go through a lot of technical stuff on this new Corporate Transparency Act. There's a lot of I don't knows. There's a lot of unknowns. And so a lot of the rules have been written, but I think realistically how people are going to deal with this, those rules haven't really yet been written. So I just take this all with a grain of salt. This is information, is not legal advice. What is the Corporate Transparency Act? What is it? So the Corporate Transparency Act was bipartisan federal legislation that was passed. It was enacted January 1, 2021, and this requires many businesses to report their beneficial owners. So it's enacted in 2021, effective 2024. So this is a reporting requirement to the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. So this is an arm of the U.S. Treasury, and this came out of the National Defense Authorization Act. I want you to look, if you're looking at the video, I want you to look at the seal. There's a bunch of ones and zeros. That means computers. There are two eagles' claws. There are no olive branches in those claws, okay? So I think this was a very meaningful design of this. This is a criminal investigation unit, okay? It's what it is. It's a network. It's a system that reports information that is used in criminal prosecution. So this is very serious business. And if you're the kind of person who's like, well, I'm just going to blow this off, I think that's a really bad idea. I really think you need to pay attention to it because this is tied to criminal enforcement. So this really is a real expansion of the anti-money laundering laws. And the purpose is to prevent money laundering, terrorist financing. I mean, we're in January of 2024. Just take a look in the world. There's all sorts of bad actors out there. And a lot of these terrorist acts require a significant amount of money. And so one of the things that the government's doing is that this is a worldwide program, by the way. This is not just limited to the United States. A lot of money flows through the United States, flows through United States entities, and the U.S. government is really taking a much closer look at this, much closer scrutiny. Also, tax fraud, right? There are a lot of people that don't pay their taxes. If everyone paid their taxes, I think we would probably all pay less tax, but the government really is ramping up the tax evasion. So again, I'm going to repeat myself as I go through this because I think this is the type of thing that you need to hear 3 or 4 times. If your entity, if your LLC, partnership, or corporation was created before January 1, 2024, so December 31, 2023 or earlier, these rules apply beginning January 1, 2025. If the entity was created January 1 of 2024 to, now, they apply right now. And in 2024, they started out with a 30-day reporting requirement, but I think the government's like, well, 30 days, it's kind of new. Maybe we should give them a little bit more time. So for 2024, you got 90 days. So that's if your entity was formed in year 2024. They're giving you a little bit of a reprieve. So what is the mission of the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network? It's to safeguard the financial system, not the U.S. financial system, the financial system. And so something to understand, post-World War II, before World War II, we did not have open oceans. We did not have open trade like we do now. After World War II, we have the United States Navy, and one of the missions of the United States Navy is to leave waters open and free for international commerce. This is kind of the same thing. So the idea is we need to have a financial system free of illicit use, money laundering. There was a $390 billion with a B, $390 billion money laundering scandal in 2008. It's a crazy amount of money. I mean, there's a lot of funds here. And this promotes national security through the use of financial authorities and the collection, analysis, and dissemination of financial intelligence. So this is an intelligence gathering arm of the United States Treasury. Treasury's mission, United States Treasury, it's important to understand the why behind this and how serious this is. Treasury's mission is to maintain a strong economy, by promoting conditions that enable equitable and sustainable economic growth at home and abroad. So it's very important. This is a worldwide mission, combating threats to and protecting the integrity of the financial system, the world's financial system. This is a really big deal, and managing the U.S. government's finances and resources effectively. I think, reasonable minds can differ on that, but it's very important to understand that the mission of the U.S. Treasury and FinCEN is a worldwide mission. So very serious business. The financial system, not just the U.S. financial system. So, who's required to report under the Corporate Transparency Act? All domestic and foreign companies. So, even if you're a foreign company, and by foreign meaning created outside the United States or its jurisdictions, registered to do business anywhere in the U.S. must report. So, if you're a French company and you are doing business in the United States, you have to report. If you're a Mexican company doing business in the United States, you're going to have to report into the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. Any corporation, LLC partnership, and this is a general partnership, limited liability partnership, business trust. We don't really talk a whole lot about a business trust, but a business trust is kind of a precursor or predated LLCs in many respects, or other domestic or foreign entity that's formed or registered under the laws of the United States or any state or tribe, and has at least one beneficial owner. So there's going to be one beneficial owner because there's always somebody in charge. So the human who files with the Secretary of State, again, must report. There are 23 exemptions. What are the exemptions? We're going to get into that. But the exemptions are larger companies. Just as a heads up, larger companies, if you have 5 million in revenue or more and 20 employees and a physical presence in the United States, you're an exempt organization or an exempt business, because the government already knows what you're doing, right? I mean, you're already reporting a lot to the government. And if you're in the financial services, so those people have different regulatory, and a lot of these are iterations of financial services. They're already heavily regulated. So what is a beneficial owner? A beneficial owner is a natural person. This means a human being with a heartbeat, somebody who's alive, who directly or indirectly, through any contract, arrangement, understanding, relationship, or otherwise, exercises substantial control over the entity or owns 25% or more ownership interest. So Owen has Maple Street LLC. So Owen went out and he went to Secretary of State through his lawyer, created an LLC, put Maple Street into the LLC, right? Shocker, right? It's an apartment building on Maple Street. And the LLC has no employees, right? Owen's just collecting the rents and maybe making repairs and mowing the lawn, and has gross revenue of $100,000 a year. Owen must report to FinCEN, okay? So it's a little counterintuitive, because you would think, oh, reporting Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, these must be big companies. It's actually the opposite. The smaller the company, the more likely it is to apply. So very important to pay attention to. Owen's got to report to FinCEN. So what isn't a beneficial owner? It's a minor child if the information of the child's parent or guardian is reported. So if it's, if you're holding something for a minor child, maybe it's in trust, maybe it's maybe it's a Uniform Transfers to Minors Act or something like that. It's going to be the parent's information. An individual acting as a nominee, intermediary, custodian, or agent on behalf of another individual. So this might be a trustee of a trust. It might be somebody who's acting under an agent under a durable power of attorney, something like that. An individual acting solely as an employee of the entity and whose control is derived solely from the employment status of the person. So, if you're a hired gun president of a company, then you're an employee of that company, and if those shares are owned by somebody else, then the president wouldn't necessarily be a reporting person. An individual whose only interest in the entity is through inheritance. So if somebody dies owning beneficial ownership and it's going through an inheritance process, that is not a beneficial owner. And a creditor of the entity is not a beneficial owner unless they exercise substantial control or own more than 25%. So Mike manages Main Street LLC, which owns a self-storage facility on Main Street, right? Mike has a 20% ownership in the LLC and has substantial control. So he's the one who's deciding on everything, right? And there's a definition of substantial control in there. The LLC is owned by 4 other partners, each own 20%. So Main Street LLC is a reporting company because it doesn't meet one of the exemptions. And the beneficial ownership information report, it's reported as to Mike's interest because he has substantial control, but not the other 4. So a little bit of nuance there. What are the penalties for failure to file? It is money and jail time. So willfully providing false information, always a bad idea, especially to a agency that gathers information for criminal prosecution, which is FinCEN. Okay. You have to tell the truth. You always have to tell the truth, right? But especially in this case, willfully providing false information is in and of itself a crime. Failing to provide complete information or failing to update information is subject to fine and imprisonment. And if you fail to comply with the Corporate Transparency Act's reporting requirements, you may be subject to civil penalties of $500 a day up to $10 million and 2 years in prison. I view these, frankly, as this kind of gets into the why. You will probably see people getting penalized, but these are likely going to be enhancements on other crimes. I mean, I see this as an enhanced penalty. And also, if Owen doesn't report, is he really going to jail? I don't know. Maybe, who knows, right? I don't know, but these are the rules. Complying with the Corporate Transparency Act. Okay, so what is it that you have to do? Again, there's a lot out there on this. There's a good website, but you do go to the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network secure online portal. You can just Google FinCEN portal, but it's boiefiling.fincen.gov. It says, welcome to the system, right? And you can either download it or you can do it online. It's probably just easier to do it online rather than downloading. And there's a warning, you're entering a government portal and you're giving some very important information. So this is where it gets kind of interesting. And I'm not going to go through each screenshot, but you do have to complete this report in its entirety. And we will cover the information that has to go in there. And if you're the one reporting, good luck getting a hold of this stuff, right? Because you're going to see, you'll have a lot of people saying, well, why do I need to give you that? And why do I need to give you that? And I can't get this to you. And, you may have 30 days or you may have 90 days. These are very short windows of time. Corporate Transparency Act exemptions. What is exempt? 19 are government, financial services, and accounting. So if it's a government agency, yeah, well, of course they're exempt. Large operating company. This is really the big exemption. So if you're watching this and you're like, oh my gosh, I've got this company with 100 people. What's my role? What do I have to do? If you have more than 20 full-time U.S. employees and reported revenue of 5 million or more and an operating presence at a physical location in the United States, you don't have to report. You're not a reporting company. If your revenue dips down below 5 million or you go to 19 employees, yes, you're a reporting company. So this is something you might not have now, but down the road, you might have to pay attention to that. And if you're a lawyer watching this, you probably want to ask your clients, if you meet with them, hey, how many employees do you have? What's your revenue? If you're a CPA, you really want to pay attention to that top line revenue number, and you want to pay attention to the full-time employees as well. Subsidiaries that are wholly owned directly or indirectly by the foregoing exempt entities. So if you have a holding company with 20 employees that's got a single member LLC that maybe holds a piece of property, that is not a reporting company. So a little bit of nuance on there. This is why it's probably a good idea to meet with someone who understands this. And we are in the process, candidly, we're in the process of learning like everyone else. I don't think there's an expert on the Corporate Transparency Act yet, but we're in the thick of it. And we're learning very fast, and we're helping our clients with this right now. So any entity, what about an inactive entity? Clients come to us and they say, Jim, I formed this LLC in 2018. I haven't done anything with it. If it was created January 1, 2020 or earlier, or is that before January 1, 2020? It might be before January 21, 2020. I have a feeling. So we might want to correct that. So don't go to the bank on that. It seems like it's December 31, 2019 and earlier. Not owned by a foreign person, no change in ownership in the last 2 months, and no more than 1,000 in revenue. So literally, this is a dormant LLC. You have an LLC, nothing's coming in, nothing's going out, and doesn't otherwise hold any other assets. If it's sort of an empty shell, it is not it's exempt under the Corporate Transparency Act. What information is reported under the Corporate Transparency Act? Very important, and get ready. You're probably not going to like this. Companies must submit a beneficial ownership information report to FinCEN. So this is reporting beneficial owners. So let's say your company's already reported. The person who set up the entity is already reported. Now this is the one that might be recurring. So we've had some questions pop up where they say, well, is this an annual filing? Well, when somebody has more than 25% interest or exercises substantial control, that is deemed a beneficial owner. That beneficial owner, that information must be reported. What does this include? Full name, date of birth, current residential address, and then government issued ID number. So This is where it gets kind of interesting. A non-expired driver's license, a non-expired US passport, or a non-expired identification document issued by state, US territory, possession, local government, or Indian tribe. And if none of those exist, a non-expired foreign passport. The problem is, what if it's expired? Well, you're going to have to get a non-expired ID, and an image of this document must also be submitted to the federal government. Interesting. So they're collecting a lot of information. And, this is maybe why they have the 25% requirement, because if you're less than 25%, then you're not having to report. So it's maybe a maximum of 4, plus if someone exerts substantial control. But in the real world, just kind of thinking about this, it's probably just going to be 4 IDs you're going to have to provide. So again, a beneficial owner is somebody who exercises substantial control over a reporting company, owns or owns or controls 25% or more of the ownership interest. A change in the beneficial ownership must be reported within 30 days. And I think this is what's going to zing a lot of people. So if you have an interest in an LLC, and let's say you have 5 people who own 20%. None of those people are beneficial owners, right? Except maybe the person who has exercises substantial control. If you have 4 people who own 20%, but if one of those people sells out to the other 4, now everyone has 25%, you're going to have to report within 30 days that transaction. So if one of those members, dips out, says, hey, I'm going to sell my interest to the remaining members here, I'm going to give it to you, those remaining members are now beneficial owners, and that information will have to be reported to FinCEN. So if you're a lawyer or CPA, your clients oftentimes do things and they come into you later on and they say, well, I sold out my interest in this company, or I bought out an interest in this company 6 months ago. If, that's going to be a problem. And, what's the solution? I don't know. I don't have an answer. I'm just pointing at the hole in the donut, as they say. So you must request to get a FinCEN ID if you're if you're the person arranging for the creation of this entity. You are the person who is obligated to report to FinCEN. You need a FinCEN ID number. And so this is the one we had a question earlier on, at least at the time we've recorded this. The portal to get a FinCEN ID is not a secure portal. I'm not really sure why it's not a secure portal. It's kind of surprising, but that's something you will need to get that before you can submit your beneficial ownership information report. If I'm throwing a lot at you, you can rewind this, take a look at it, but there's a lot here. So the information, legal name and alternate name of the company as it appears in the articles of incorporation, or maybe articles of organization if it's an LLC, the DBA or any trading names. So sometimes people will be XYZ Corporation doing business as Bob's Plumbing, or whatever it is, and no abbreviation of names. The taxpayer identification number or social security number. So you're going to need the social security number of each owner, and the taxpayer identification number of each entity, and the jurisdiction of formation and date of first registration, which is easily accessible by public record, and current U.S. address. Company applicant, the company applicant needs to get a FinCEN ID. If you don't have one, you can get one. And this is the person who's doing the reporting. You're going to need to provide your legal name and date of birth, your current address, and a form of ID, and upload that. And the beneficial owner, you're going to need to provide that as well. And we did cover that. And we're kind of going through these are screenshots. So residential address, form of identification, we talked about that. You got to upload the ID, and then a certification, compliance reminder. What are the deadlines under the Corporate Transparency Act? So very, very important on the deadlines in the Corporate Transparency Act. If your entity was formed before January 1, 2024, you have until January 1, 2025, and probably within 30 days, but you got to file in 2025. Existing entities formed in 2024, you have 90 days from date of formation. So if you created an entity January 1, 2024, you got 90 days, sometime late in March, to do that, to file your beneficial ownership information and register the company. Entities formed 2025 and later must report within 30 days. And again, a change in beneficial owner must be reported within 30 days. So we have a little graphic here. So a little bit confusing on the numbers. So if it's formed this year, you have 90 days. And if it's formed in 2024, 90 days, formed in 2025, 30 days. And if it's formed before 2024, you don't report in 2024, but you do report in 2025. We've got some resources here, some links to their website, some FAQs. And if you just go into your Google search bar and put in Corporate Transparency Act, all this stuff pops up. Key takeaways: reporting company, and this is the conclusion of our materials here. And the reporting company must provide the company information if it's created by filing a document with the Secretary of State. This applies, this is very important, this applies to most small family businesses, okay? Does not apply to the big players, but if you got a small business, an LLC that owns an apartment building, an LLC that owns, a business, you're going to be subject to the reporting requirements. The company applicant, the person who is reporting about the company, is the person who created the company, right? So if you're a lawyer and you create LLCs for your clients, it's you. If you're a company that creates them for lawyers, this question came up, it might be the company that creates them for lawyers. So you're going to want to re-examine your processes. Does that make sense? Is that a risk you want to take on? Because if you don't do it timely, you're a $500 a day fine. Reporting company must complete the beneficial ownership information form. So there's an applicant for the company who's the creator of the company who files the documents at the Secretary of State. And then once that company's reported, the company itself completes the beneficial ownership information form, the beneficial owner information report. And again, if it's formed in 2023 or earlier, you don't report until 2025. But if it's created in 2024, you have 90 days. If it's created in 2025, you have 30 days. So is it enough to consult with a lawyer? I think certainly on this, you would want to assemble your A team, right? So in estate planning, we recommend you hire a certified specialist in estate planning, trust, and probate law. I wrote a book, Savvy Estate Planning, which is a great resource on the basics, sort of walk you through concepts in estate planning, not so technical, but do I want to protect this inheritance from my future ex-son-in-law or future ex-daughter-in-law, right? If you want to protect your children. So we cover that quite a bit. This is going to involve a CPA. And I think this is an area where, will the CPAs take the laboring oar on the Corporate Transparency Act compliance, or will the lawyers take the laboring oar? I really don't know. It kind of is falling between the cracks. It may be that the CPAs, their knowledge can be time lagged is the problem. So a CPA oftentimes doesn't find out until the following calendar year of all the stuff that happened the prior year. The lawyer is the one who's typically involved. If there's some sale of a corporate interest, the lawyer likely will be involved sooner than the CPA. So whether it's the lawyer or the CPA that does the reporting, I think that's probably a case-by-case basis. It's good to have a financial advisor, whether that's somebody who advises you on your real estate or your marketable securities, or if you have if you're lending money, whatever it is, it's good to have somebody another set of eyes. A certified financial planner is always a good choice. And again, read Savvy Estate Planning, which covers a lot of the kind of foundational estate issues. And I would say if your estate is over 5 million if you're single, or over 10 million if you're married, you really do want to consider some what we call advanced planning techniques. Now, what I mean by that is there are things that you can do to cut that 45% death tax bill. So in 2026, anything over about 7 million, if you're single, anything over about 14 million if you're married, is going to be taxed at 45%. So that's a big number. And there are a lot of things you can do to minimize that. And I've actually read a commentary. The person said, you have to be a moron to pay estate taxes. I think that's a little out there, but the point being is estate taxes fundamentally are optional. And if you have a larger estate, many times there are things that you can do to either significantly cut down that tax bill or eliminate it entirely. We have offices in Northern and Southern California, in kind of the big population centers in the Bay Area, LA, and the capital region. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the bell and give us a thumbs up. We really appreciate that. And I know that we get a lot of positive feedback from our YouTube channel. And if you have some feedback that's positive, I mean, I suppose if negative, you could do it as well, but positive's good too. It really kind of pumps me up on a personal level. And I know I've been able to help out a lot of people. At least it's a feedback I'm getting from people. It's like, wow, you're taking the time to do this and kind of unpack this and explain it in plain English terms, as much as I hope that I might too. Now, next we have trust administration attorney, what it is, and do you really need an expert? So what happens? What is trust administration? I'll be covering that next week, January 11th. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you might have already seen it, which is the weird YouTube thing. It's kind of like traveling to Australia. Like I think you land yesterday or tomorrow or something. Anyway, so trust administration is a very broad topic, but this is when people stop being trustees. So if you have a living trust, one day, I hate to break the news to you, you are not going to be trustee. You're either going to resign, you're going to be incapacitated or pass away. Somebody else will take that mantle. Do you need a lawyer for that or not? What are the things that need to happen? Sometimes you don't need a lawyer. If mom's got $10 in the bank and that's it, yeah, you might not need a lawyer. But for a lot of our clients, they do need a lawyer because things are significantly more complex than having $10 in the bank. The next day, Rochelle Lee Warner and Tasha John, my partners at Cunningham Legal, are going to be covering a Q&A online event. Is your trustee prepared? So if you have a living trust, I really encourage you to go. They're going to be it's Q&A. Ask the questions you want. They're going to give you answers. There will be a disclaimer that says this is absolutely not legal advice, but at least they'll hopefully nudge you in the right direction and help you get some clarity on your legacy. Because really, this is why people do estate planning. It's peace of mind. It's legacy. Yeah, it's minimization of taxes, but really it's, you're here on this earth, you're working. And when we leave this earth, what is our legacy? Is it a material legacy? Is it a legacy of family, of culture, whatever it is? That's something you need to figure out on an individual level. That's where we come in and we help people. We help you on the execution of your legacy. That's what trust administration is really legacy execution. I will open it up for questions at this time. If you're watching this on YouTube, just keep watching. Or if you're listening on our YouTube audio channel, just keep watching because the next video is just going to roll magically start after this one.